How's it going, folks? Lampini here again, and today we are going to be reviewing Week 6 of the 2024 NFL season. Week 5 was a very, very big surprise. It's the first week that I didn't end above 500 in my predictions. If you take a look over here, I got a couple games wrong. I probably should have picked the Bucks, but a lot of other games like the Cardinals over the 49ers, the Broncos beating the Raiders, and then the Texans beating the Bills. Those are a lot of toss-up games, but I finished the week 7-7. Which means for the season, I am 47-30. So I've still called more games correctly than I have incorrectly. I'm just glad I didn't end in the negatives in this one, but it was my worst predictions thus far. The NFL is very unpredictable, but we do the impossible here and we try and predict it. So let's get started with Thursday Night Football. So the Thursday night game is going to be the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. These are two NFC West teams coming off of losses last week. The 49ers lost out to the Cardinals 24-23, and the Giants beat the Seahawks 29-20. Very, very surprising there. For the 49ers, this is a very difficult loss for them. They fall to now 2-3. Same record as the Cardinals. The Seahawks are 3-2. They are first in the division, and that is probably the weakest division in football. If I had to guess, maybe the AFC South with the Texans on top of it. I think that one might be a little bit weaker, but this one pretty darn close. Brock Purdy was 19 of 35 for 244 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, a 62.1 passer rating, and then Brandon Ayuk had his first big game of the season. He had 8 receptions for 147 yards. So he's finally earning that contract with his first good game of the season. But, yeah, they lost out to the Cardinals, and this is what I was saying about the Cardinals. They are sneaky. They are scrappy. They're not going to go down lightly. I was a bit concerned after the Commanders beat them that I was like, oh, well, these guys just kind of a nothing team, right? Or they're just not going to be there. But they beat the 49ers, so, I mean, they got to be worth something. As for the Seahawks, I am very, very surprised that they lost out to the Giants. Geno Smith was 28 of 40 for 284 yards and a touchdown, a 98.3 passer rating. They did okay, but the Giants just scored more points than they did. To put it simply, I didn't watch this game, unfortunately, so I couldn't tell you necessarily what they did wrong. But that's a bad loss for the Seattle Seahawks, who are now 3-2. They've lost 2 straight, and I'm wondering if that 3-0 start from the Seahawks was a bit fraudulent. But that division is wide open right now, so this is a must-win for the 49ers if they want to stay in contention. I understand that they're very injured, and Christian McCaffrey may not even play this. He might not even play this season, based on the injuries that he's had. People were saying he was going to be available week 1. They really fleeced some fantasy owners who picked him first overall when you really think about it. But I'm going to go with the 49ers. I think this is going to be a good recovery game for them. If they fall to 2-4, then that is a huge hole to dig themselves out of, especially with Seattle moving to 4-2. They're 2 games. Well, no, they're 2 games ahead of them, but they're going to be fighting an uphill battle ever since then. So, you know, that's what that's looking like. So I'm going with the 49ers. So this game I think this has the potential to be one of the best games this week, and I really hope it gets flexed into primetime. We have the Battle of the Beltway. We have the Washington Commanders 4-1 at the Baltimore Ravens 3-2. These are 2 top 10 teams in the NFL, and it's the Battle of the Beltway is what I'm calling it. I am very, very excited for this game. The Washington Commanders have been the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions of this season. They have they are shocking the NFL world with what they've been doing. They've scored 30 points in the last 3 games. Jaden Daniels was 14 of 25 for 238 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 85.1 passer rating. Terry McLaurin had 4 receptions for 112 yards with a 66-yard bomb that Jaden Daniels had that was just incredible. He avoided a sack, throwing, it wasn't against his body, but running to the sideline, throwing it across his body, downfield, drops a dime to Terry McLaurin, who almost goes into the end zone with it. He gets caught just at the very end by Denzel Ward, I believe it was. But yeah, like the Commanders have looked incredible. And what everything people have been saying about Jaden Daniels, he is front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Someone had said that we found our Lamar Jackson. I mean, I guess I would say that. I mean, we just found our franchise quarterback. Like, we have not had this level of excitement for a quarterback since 2012 with RG3. And then a little bit later with Kirk Cousins when we realized how good Kirk Cousins was. But what I like about Jayden Daniels is he threw that red zone interception early on in the game, but he recovered and he played a flawless game after that. A quarterback that can overcome adversity like that, not get discouraged, it shows a lot of poise and a lot of maturity. And I think that's what I like the most about Jayden Daniels, especially that he doesn't over-rely on being a runner. He runs when he needs to. There was a fourth down where he got to the outside. He ran down the sideline for like a gain of 15 to 20 yards. He knows when to run and he knows when to pass, but he passes first, which I think is very, 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 very important for him. But I've been liking everything I've seen with Jayden Daniels. Our offense is operating on all cylinders. When we go over the point differentials and the standings, you will see that the Commanders they are first in points scored. You know who's number 2? The Ravens. So anyway, I digress. This is going to be an incredible game to watch. So basically, if there was any team that's coming off of a better showing than the Commanders, it's the Ravens, who scored 41 points. They dug themselves out of a hole where the Bengals were up by 2 possessions. Lamar Jackson was 26 of 42 for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 119.9 passer rating. Derrick Henry, who was quiet most of the game, had a 50-yard run in overtime that really sealed the deal for them, and that's why they have him. He had 15 carries for 92 yards, a touchdown. He averaged 6.1 yards a carry, but like I said, more than half of those yards came from a single run in overtime. And then Zay Flowers had a good showing, 7 receptions for 111 yards. The Ravens' combination with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, particularly in these last 2 games, have really shown what they're capable of. It has been very, very impressive what they've been able to do. Lamar Jackson can run, but Derrick Henry can also run. He leads the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He is building an Offensive Player of the Year campaign right now, and it's very, very impressive to see. So, do the Commanders improve to 5-1? I think this is going to be the biggest test for the Commanders. They beat the Bengals, which we all thought was a huge surprise. But the Bengals are not looking like a very good team. They're giving up 30 points game in and game out, which is not good. And then I thought the Cardinals was going to be another easy game, but the Cardinals beat the 49ers, so how bad can they really be? But we destroyed both of them. We destroyed them, and then now we beat the Browns 34-13. But I don't think the Browns are a very good team. It's in Baltimore, but not too much of a home field advantage. Like, the Washington Commanders are going to bus ride over there, most likely. There's going to be a lot of Commanders fans there. Whew. This is going to be a real test for the Commanders to see if they are more of like a Miami Dolphins kind of team, where they beat up on bad teams when they face actual contenders like the Ravens, who have shown that they have reestablished themselves as one of the best teams in the league after starting 0-2. This is going to be a real big showing to see where the Commanders are when they face an actual contender. I am going to be going with the Ravens on this one. I do think the Ravens are going to win. What I am hoping for is that it's going to be a nip-and-tuck drag-out game where the Commanders don't just get blown out, where they play them really hard, and they basically show the NFL that, yeah, they lost to the Ravens, but the Ravens made it to the conference championship last year, and they are one of the best teams in the league. So if the Commanders can hang with them, there's a chance that they can make some noise in the playoffs. Because right now, the Commanders have the second highest point differential. They've scored the most points in the league. Their defense is getting better. Like, everything is trending in the right direction for the Commanders, which I am not used to at all. I'm really glad I decided to do my prediction videos this year and skip them last year because there wasn't much to talk about. But very, very exciting stuff from the Commanders. I am hoping that I would love it if we win and move to 5-1. I don't think that's going to happen, though. We are in firm control of the number 1 seed in the NFC East. So I am just hoping that they have a tough game with the Ravens, play them hard, and show people that, yeah, maybe they lost, but they're serious contenders. So next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 3-2, and the Jaguars picked up their first win of the season, etching out the Indianapolis Colts on a last-second field goal. Trevor Lawrence had his first good game of the season. He was 28 of 34, 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and a 119.5 passer rating. And then Brian Thomas had a 85-yard touchdown pass. Including that, he had 5 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. So Brian Thomas Jr. turning out to be a very good draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But right now, Doug Peterson is kind of on the hot seat right now. he is not like they have not looked good this season. They've lost some really bad games, but it's good that they at least beat the Colts. They got that going for them. As for the Bears, it seems like Caleb Williams is getting more and more confident with each game, because this was the best game that he's played so far. He was 20 of 29 for 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 126.2 passer rating. Piggybacking off of that, DJ Moore had a very good game as well. 5 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it looks like the Bears are getting some momentum now. They thrashed the Carolina Panthers 36-10, and they're up to 3-2. So the Bears started off a little bit slow, but it looks like they are, like I said, gaining a bit more momentum with each week. Now they're starting to play like the team that everyone expected them to be. It's at home. This is a game that the Bears frankly should win. I'm going with the Chicago Bears on this one. I don't think the Jaguars are going to provide much resistance. I hope Trevor Lawrence continues in his development, because it's really funny, because everyone was saying, he's the greatest prospect ever, never lost in college, never lost in high school. People can't seem to understand why he's not developing. They're saying it's everyone's fault but his own, but I think people are starting to catch on to that, and they're starting to blame him now too. But they're just like, what's going on? Why isn't he developing like the quarterback we all expected him to be? You know what I mean? So I'm going with the Bears. I just hope Trevor Lawrence has a good game. So next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Green Bay Packers. Both teams are coming off a win. The Packers are 2-3. The Packers are 3-2. The Cardinals are 2-3. The Cardinals are coming off a very impressive win off of the San Francisco 49ers. Kyler Murray was 19 of 30 for 195 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 79.2 passer rating. Pretty average game for him. And then Jordan Love was 15 of 26 for 224 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception for a 95.7 passer rating. Pretty solid game on his part. They went against a very injured Rams team, though, so not really expected to lose that game. They were up 24-12 at one point. The Rams scored 6 points in the fourth quarter. It didn't really matter too much from there. So, just an impressive showing by the Green Bay Packers there. I do think the Packers are going to win this one as well over the Cardinals. I never know what I'm going to expect from the Cardinals, considering how much we defeated, how easily we beat them, but then the 49ers beat them. They're still a very young, developing team. But I question, there's a lot of time to wait in the NFL. And when you have stuff like the Commanders did going worst to first, the Cardinals management might run out of time with Jonathan Gannon if he can't get more out of his team. But I'm going with the Packers. I think it's going to be a pretty close game, but I think the Cardinals are going to fall short. They're just not there yet. The Packers are further in the rebuild than the Cardinals are. So I'm going with the Packers. So this next game, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are coming off of a bye. The previous week 4, they beat the Miami Dolphins 31-12. It was their first win of the season. They are 1-3. Nothing to really write home about Tennessee Titans. Will Levis isn't the guy, neither is Mason Rudolph. But that being said, Will Levis actually left the game early after going 3 for 4. And then Mason Rudolph came in 9 for 17, 85 yards, 67 passer rating. Not too much to write home about there from any part of the team. As for the Colts, they lost out to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another example, I think, of a team that's just they're not really going anywhere. And with Anthony Richardson now out, they might actually have a better chance of winning now that Joe Flacco is now playing. He was 33 of 44, 359 yards, 3 touchdowns, 121.3 passer rating. Alec Pierce had 3 receptions for 134 yards and a touchdown. Joe Flacco is, we all know who he is. He's a veteran journeyman quarterback, 39 years old, but he can still play football. So if he leads the Colts to a playoff berth too, that'd be incredibly impressive. And I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he's going to win a second comeback player of the year. But he still has a lot to go with being a quarterback in this league. I guess he's going to continue to be a backup when his name is called. He comes in and he does what he does. But in this game, Joe Flacco, I think, is going to put up enough points to beat the Tennessee Titans. I don't think, the Titans just don't have a lot going for them. And especially with Will Levis out, Mason Rudolph might do a little bit better as a backup than Will Levis as a starter, but like I said, the Tennessee Titans don't have a lot of talent on their team. I don't really think they're going to be going anywhere. I'm going with the Colts in this one. Not much to write home about this matchup. So next up, we have the Houston Texans at the New England Patriots. Patriots lost out to the Dolphins. They are now 1-4. The Texans beat the Bills. They are now 4-1. A very impressive showing by them. C.J. Stroud was 28 of 38 for 331 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 97.6 passer rating. Nico Collins had 2 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. One of them was a 67-yard touchdown. Love to see that. Again, I have Nico Collins on one of my fantasy teams. And then Stephon Diggs had his first real good game as a Houston Texan. Six receptions for 82 yards. I'm going to cut to the chase with this one. I think the Texans are going to win. Everyone was saying that the Patriots are rebuilding and you got to trust the process. They're a well-made team, but they haven't looked good. And if you're a well-coached team that's in the middle of a rebuild, you can't lose to a team like the Dolphins that are trotting out Tyler Huntley as their quarterback. So I think the Patriots just are not a good team. And I think, again, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Gerard Mayo needs to turn around the ship. And at some point in this season, they got to give Drake May the ball and see what they can do. Because, I started thinking about this with them, where it's you don't want him to just be thrown out to the fire, see ghosts, and then just fail and fall on his ass, right? But you can only really bench a rookie quarterback if you have a starter that puts them in a position to succeed. We're talking about the Alex Smiths on the Kansas City Chiefs in 2017, or Jordan Love sitting for Aaron Rodgers. They have pretty much. The Patriots know they're not going anywhere this year. You know what I mean? They know that they're not going to go anywhere. They know they're not going to be contenders. But so at this point, you might just need to see what you have with Drake May. Get him some reps. Get him some experience, because you're seeing it with Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, where the more starts they get under the belt, the better they progressively do. So I don't know. I think if they want to further his development, maybe they're going to wait until after this game, or maybe they'll put him in during this game. But they got to do something to get him started in his development, because he's not doing much. So I'm going with the Texans on this one. So next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints. Saints are now 2-3. They've dropped 3 in a row after their good start, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-2. All right. I'm officially going to say it. Those first 2 weeks for the Chiefs were frauds. It was a fluke. They are showing us who they are now. Made a team that went all in. If Derek Carr is your starter, you're not going to do anything. He is the worst good quarterback in the NFL. They are not going anywhere with him. The Buccaneers lost in overtime to a game-winning drive from Kirk Cousins. It's those kinds of losses that are just all right, you're going to have those kinds of games. So I think the Buccaneers are going to win that division, and I think that they are going to make some noise in the playoffs because they have looked really, really good. Baker Mayfield was 19 of 24 for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions for 137.5 passer rating. And then Mike Evans had 5 receptions for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, they did really well. It was a shootout. They scored 30 points. The Falcons were just the better team at the end of the day. It was a fantastic game. I think it's just, like I said, another example of you're going to drop games like that. It's going to go into overtime. The ball won't drop in your favor. Kirk Cousins will drive them down the field and win. It's not a terrible loss for the Buccaneers, and I think they'll bounce back in this game because the Saints were really embarrassed against the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost 26-13. They're not going to win. Derek Carr is still, I'm not even going to go over the stats with them. Rashid Shaheed had a long touchdown, and he's really established himself as a good deep threat. But right now, the Saints are really on a skid, and you hate to see it with the amount of talent that they have on their team and how much salary cap they're taking up. A team that's falling this low, falling this short with the level of salary cap they have, is a serious problem, right? So, because now it's we used all this money. We have to dip into a full rebuild after we weren't even that good. You know what I mean? So I'm going with the Buccaneers on this one. They're going to improve to 4-2. They're going to reestablish their control over the division. I'm going with the Buccaneers. So this next game is a bit of a innocuous one. You probably won't think too much of this game, but I do. It It is the Cleveland Browns at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the reason why I say this is a very interesting game. First, I'm going to go over the Browns because most of the intrigue is with the Eagles. But I'm going with the Browns first. They got beat really bad, 34-13. They scored a touchdown. They scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to kind of dampen the load. And that was the only touchdown they scored, so they only kicked 2 field goals in that game. Deshaun Watson was 15 of 28 for 125 yards, a touchdown, and a 77.2 passer rating. So, I don't watch a lot of Browns football. This was the first time I really got to see Deshaun Watson in detail. He's cooked. He is done. I was watching that game. He's missing wide open people. He's overthrowing people. Amari Cooper was wide open on one play. Hands are here. He throws the ball like right here, out of reach. The guy's lost all his accuracy. He is cooked. I think a lot of people he had shoulder surgery last year, I'm pretty sure. And it's reminding me of when Cam Newton got shoulder surgery. He looks completely washed. And it is insane to see. I don't know how someone loses all their talent overnight like this. And I think it's crazy that the accusations and this trade and contract is what's going to define Deshaun Watson's career. Not the 3 straight Pro Bowl seasons that he had, not the playoff win he had against Buffalo in the 2019 season. All those things are going to be secondary to the accusations, the trade, and the contract with the Browns, and how he randomly forgot how to play football. That is what his career is going to be. And I think it is insane. We've never seen anything like this before. A quarterback that showed so much talent when he was younger. So much talent. He was supposed, I'm sure you guys were there. The people were putting him in the same category as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And now it's Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and C.J. Stroud. The Texans replaced Deshaun Watson effortlessly with a guy that is looking to be better. It's very, very crazy. But, yeah, the Browns are cooked. Deshaun Watson is washed. They need to put Jameis Winston in. Based on how I've heard him motivate his team, I think putting Jameis Winston in is going to be the best thing to happen to the Browns. If Deshaun Watson plays another bad game, they got to bench him. I don't care how much money you're paying him. You can't do this to your locker room. You cannot keep trotting this guy out because then you're going to lose the locker room. You're gonna have to fire Kevin Stefanski. You're going to have to fire somebody because your team is in disarray because you made one of the worst trades in NFL history. I know some people were saying that the Russell Wilson trade was one of the worst in NFL history, which it was. But now we're starting to see, because the Browns made the playoffs last year, we're really starting to see the consequences of their actions here with this one, when Deshaun Watson's actually playing. Crazy that 2 of the worst trades in NFL history happened in the same offseason, but I digress. Now let's talk about the Eagles. The Eagles had a stinker against the Buccaneers in Week 4. They lost 33-16. And the reason why I say this is an important game for the Eagles, no one was talking about the collapse that the Eagles had last year, where they were 8-1, and then they lost 7 of their last 8 or something crazy like that. They came in against the Buccaneers and they got beat in a similar fashion, So they came off their bye. There is no excuses for this team to be flat going against especially the Cleveland Browns. At home, coming off a bye, this is as big of a layup game for the Eagles as you are ever going to get. If they do not win this game convincingly, that's a serious, serious problem. Because as far as I see, the Browns are one of the worst teams in the league. The Eagles are still a playoff team, or at least people say they still are. The 2022 campaign for the Eagles is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. They basically looked like world beaters. They looked like the Ravens did last year. They were Super Bowl or bust, and they just fell short in the Super Bowl. They need to win this game. If they lose this game, then their skid is continuing, and Nick Sirianni is going to be fired midseason, which I freaking called at the beginning of the season at Week 1. I said if the Eagles start a slide and they start losing games and they start looking like they did at the end of last season, Nick Sirianni is going to be fired midseason. And if something bad happens in this game, if they lose, that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm a football genius, and I called it before the season even started. But me inflating my ego aside, I do still think the Eagles are going to win this game. I think the Browns have so little going for them right now that, like, the Eagles would really have to shit the bed to lose this game. I think they're going to win. I think a mark for concern is even if the Browns keep it close, because then it's like, all right, you guys aren't very good. Like it's not even that you guys are collapsing. Like, you're either collapsing, you've lost the locker room, or your team just isn't very good anymore. Or it's just like the coaching isn't good. I don't know what it's going to be. I think the Eagles are going to win, though. So next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers at the Denver Broncos. Chargers are coming off of a bye. They lost to the Chiefs 17-10 in Week 4. And the Denver Broncos have looked really, really impressive. They quietly won 3 straight games, and they're now 3-2. And I think this game is what's putting people on notice for them. They beat the Raiders 34-18. Bo Nix had his first good game as a starter. 19-27, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 117.2 passer rating. So that's a very good stat line for Bo Nix. Is he putting it together, or are the Raiders just a really bad team? I'd say it's a little bit of both. The Chargers, surprisingly, have not been known for their offense this year, and instead they have had a stellar defense. They are at the absolute top in terms of points allowed in the AFC. And if I just do a quick reference here, in the league, they have played 1 less game than everybody else. But they have allowed 50 points the whole season, which is the lowest in the NFL, which is very impressive. And they've had a average offense. They have a plus 18-point differential. So they are quietly turning into an okay team. But the question is, will they be better than an okay team? Justin Herbert was 16 of 27 for 179 yards and a touchdown, a 91.4 passer rating. This is like the 3rd straight year for Justin Herbert where he's just been an okay, serviceable quarterback. He hasn't been lighting up the stat line like he did in his first couple of years. But more importantly, I don't think he's turning the ball over as much. So he has been pretty good. This is going to be a very interesting game, though, because these are division rivals. The Chargers are coming off of a bye, so hypothetically speaking, they should be more well-rested. But the Broncos' defense has been very, very impressive. I'm trying to see here where the Broncos stand in terms of points allowed. So they are 3rd in the AFC in points allowed. The Chargers have allowed 50. The Broncos have allowed 73. They're tied for 2nd with the Steelers. So right now, this is looking like a low-scoring game, but the Broncos have shown that they can put up points. And I don't know if I can say the same thing for the Chargers. Because if we look at the points for chart here, the Broncos have scored more points than the Chargers, but again, they've had 1 more game than the Chargers. But if we're looking at it, the Broncos have scored 96 points. The Chargers have scored 68, so they've scored significantly more points. So who knows where the Chargers would be if they had that extra game. I'm going with the Broncos at home to win their 4th straight and improve to 4-2. It looks like they're back. They didn't need Russell Wilson. Bo Nix, young quarterback. He's making a name for himself. Very impressive. I'm going with the Broncos. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Steelers are coming off a pretty bad loss against the Cowboys, where it was 20-17, which is pretty deceptive considering they only scored 6 points through the first 3 quarters and they scored 14 points after all of that. So Justin Fields was 15 of 27 for 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 93.3 passer rating. So both those touchdowns were from Justin Fields. He continues to play very well for the Steelers. I think that even when Russell Wilson is healthy, he's going to lose his job to Justin Fields unless the Steelers go on a really bad skid and Justin Fields is looking really bad. So Justin Fields has looked good. It looks like he has a home with the Steelers, and I think that he has looked pretty good, and I think that the Steelers are going to go with him for the most part. Now, the Steelers have dropped 2 straight, which is not good considering how they started out their season. I was a big proponent of the Steelers being one of those nip-and-tuck drag-out teams where they do just enough on offense to score and to win, but didn't look like that this time around. You got to score more than just 6 points in the first 3 quarters, no matter how good your defense is. They held the Cowboys to 10 points in the first 3 quarters, right? Was it 10? No, actually, that's not true. Yeah, they held them to 10 points. No, sorry. I read the box score wrong. The Cowboys had 6 points, and they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. I had it backwards. So that's even worse. You're holding them, and then you gave it up in the fourth quarter. Now, it's not going to happen in every game, and it's not going to happen against the Raiders because the Raiders are garbage. And it got to the point where Gardner Minshew was benched and Aiden O'Connell was in the game. Not even going to dignify them with a stat rundown because it's not worth it. The Raiders are 2-3. I think everyone knew what they were going to be. They're going to be just a mid team that I guess is starting their rebuild. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. When you pedal out Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as your quarterbacks, you don't even have a young stud quarterback that you're developing. Aiden O'Connell is not that, and Gardner Minshew is a journeyman spot starter. So I don't know what they're doing. They're not my team. The Raiders are where the Commanders were 10 years ago, but that's what happens when you get good ownership. You bottom out. You completely overhaul your roster. That's what the Raiders need to do. They have been nothing relevant since 2002, since they lost that Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've been irrelevant since then. It'll be interesting to see when they finally are relevant. It's not going to be this year. I'm going with the Steelers. It should be a pretty easy victory for them. So next up, we have another 4 o'clock game here. We have the Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. So the Lions are coming off of a bye where they demolished the Seattle Seahawks 42-29. I had mentioned this last week, but Jared Goff was a perfect 18 for 18, 291 yards, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 155.8 passer rating. 18 for 18. What else can you say about that? Jahmyr Gibbs had 14 carries for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per carry. They, again, even in defeat, they look pretty good. They're proven to be a legit team. They're not frauds. They look very, very good. Spoiler alert, I think they're going to beat the Cowboys, and I think the Cowboys are going to fall to 3-3. This is kind of what I was expecting with the whole all-in my ass thing and not changing anything. They look like they're winning. It looks like their winning formula is simply getting old. They're not looking like the powerhouse that they were the last couple years because I think people have caught on to them. Teams have caught on to them. They haven't updated. They've been the same team that they have been the last 3 years. They've overstayed their welcome. They need some big changes in the offseason because this is going to be the last year of the Mike McCarthy regime, of a lot of different regimes. But I think it was ultimately the right move to keep Dak. I don't care what anyone says about Dak. I think he's a good quarterback. You can only be so good and still overcome a bad team. And I think that's the issue with the Cowboys is they're a very rudimentarily coached team that's always relied on high-end talent to get them by. Now that the scheme is really failing, the high-end talent is what's pushing them along, and it's only getting them so far, like I said. So I'm going with the Lions on this one. I think they're going to win, improve to 4-1. They are comfortably they are comfortably in control of the division. Cowboys are going to fall to 3-3. Just another way the Commanders are going to stay on top. I'm going with the Lions. So next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. The Falcons are coming off of a very, very, very impressive win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Kirk Cousins really showed us who he is again. Kirk Cousins will have good games like this every now and then, like that game with us back in 2015. The comeback against the Colts. Kirk is always that guy, and he showed it in this one. He was 42 of 58 for 509 yards, 4 touchdowns, and interception for 114.8 passer rating. To put it simply, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. Drake London had 12 receptions for 154 yards and a touchdown, probably his best game of his career. And then Darnell Mooney was 9 receptions for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. So their offense is working on all cylinders. This is the offense the Falcons wanted when they got Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix, keep that seat warm a little bit longer because Kirk Cousins is showing you that he is still here to stay. But yeah, very, very impressive showing against the Buccaneers. They needed a win like that in the division. And a win like that makes their wild card argument a bit better. It looks to be that they're going to fight for like a 7th seed. When I look at the playoff picture, incidentally, I'm not going to start doing that until the midway point of the season at week 8. that's when I'm really going to start analyzing teams' playoff potential. But a game like this shows that the Falcons have a lot of juice and they could make a playoff run. The Panthers are the Panthers. You know, they had some excitement with Andy Dalton, but now people are watching film of him, and he's not able to get away with as much. He was 18 to 28, 136 yards, an interception, 61 passer rating. The Panthers are falling down to earth a little bit. I think maybe it wasn't all Bryce Young. Now that Andy Dalton isn't playing that well, I'm going with the Falcons. They're going to win. Panthers are going to fall to 1-5. We all know what the Panthers are. They're the worst team in the league. They're going to stay that way. I'm going with the Falcons. So this next game, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the New York Giants. A very interesting Sunday night game. I don't know why the NFL continues to put the Giants in prime time. It is torture. But what's interesting about this game, the Giants are coming off a pretty good win against the Seattle Seahawks. I think a lot of times people just don't expect the Giants to win at all. But Daniel Jones was 23 of 34, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, 109.6 passer rating. Darius Slayton had probably the best game of his career. 8 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors was out with an injury, so that's why he wasn't playing, and that's why he wasn't on this stat line. But hey, Daniel Jones had a good game. He does that every now and then. And I think it's bad when he does, because then he teases Giants fans and people think, oh, maybe we can stick with him at quarterback. No, do not stick with Daniel Jones as quarterback. You got to get a new guy in the draft. Commit to your rebuild, guys. You're not going anywhere with the current core that you have. Now, as for the Bengals are really, really living off of the hype of 2021 and 2022. It is now 2024. They are 2 years removed from their last playoff run. Last year, sure, Joe Burrow was injured. Sure, they were kind of fighting injuries, and they ended 9-8. They weren't the team that they were the last couple years. I find it curious that the Bengals had their 2 playoff runs the 2 years that Lamar Jackson missed time at the end of the season with injuries. Now that Lamar Jackson is healthy, well, you saw what happened in the game with the Ravens. It was a very, very good game. And here's the thing. Joe Burrow was 30 of 39 for 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, an interception, and 137 passer rating. And then Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both had great games. Jamar Chase, 10 receptions, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 9 receptions, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Burrow is doing all he can, and they're still losing. So it seems like a defense problem for me with the Bengals, but Joe Burrow said it best in his one press conference. We're not playing like a championship caliber team. We gave them some slack for starting 0-3. They are 1-4 now. They cannot keep dropping games. I know that they're in a tough division. I know the Ravens are a really good team. But they had a double-digit lead over the Ravens for a majority of the game, and they let that slip between their fingers, and they lost it in overtime. That is not a good look. Good teams hold on to leads, and good teams finish the job in overtime, just like the Ravens did, just like the Falcons did. The Bengals are not that. I do think they are going to beat the Giants, though. I will say that. I think that the Giants don't have a high-powered enough offense, and I think the Bengals are going to outscore them. But I do think the Giants are going to score more points than they frankly should. The Bengals need to get their act together, because right now Zach Taylor's on the hot seat, and if they keep losing, then Zach Taylor his job might be in jeopardy. But I'm going with the Bengals. I think they're going to win. So we finally come down to Monday Night Football. We have the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. The Bills are 3-2. The Jets are 2-3. These are right now the only 2 teams that are in contention for the AFC East. That's another division that's looking like it's going to be pretty weak. The Bills were in a very good game against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen did not have a good game, though. He was 9 of 30 for 131 yards, a touchdown, a 56.4 passer rating. 9 of 30. That is less than 30% completion percentage. That is terrible. He left the game with an injury for a couple downs, and then he came back. But really, really bad mismanagement of the clock by the Bills. They were inside their own 10, and they threw the ball 3 times, punted back to the Texans. They got into field goal range really easily and kicked the game-winning field goal. That is not a good look from the Bills at all. The Bills were looking pretty good, and then I think I remember last year I had them number one. I had them number one on the power rankings. They're not going to be number one this time, obviously, but I think they are going to beat the Jets. Spoiler alert, but yeah, they got to do better. That was a really, really bad showing in clock management. When you're in that situation, you got to play for overtime. But I think they're going to learn their lesson. The Jets are proving to me that they're still the Jets, man. I had the Vikings winning, but Aaron Rodgers, 29 of 54 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a 54.9 passer rating. In Aaron Rodgers' 2020 MVP campaign, he threw 5 interceptions for the entire season, and he threw 3 in this game. Rodgers does not look like the man that he once was. I know it's a big shame. It's tragic, because I was one of the proponents of thinking that he was going to bounce back and he was going to be comeback player of the year and he was going to show everyone that he's the same guy that he was. He's going to have another lukewarm season like he did in 2022. I think that's just who he is. I don't know if he's going to come back for the next year, because he's looking a bit washed, as sad as it is to say. But you know, he's better than Zach Wilson. I'll say that. And I think that with him as quarterback, they still may have a chance to etch themselves into a wild card spot. I don't know, but they're just not looking the best. So I am going to go with the Buffalo Bills on this one. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win. So now it's time for the post-show analysis of the league. That's my little moniker for it. Thank you. So now we're going to look at point differentials. We're going to start off with the AFC. Looking at our point differentials here, the Bills and Chiefs are 1-2 with 36 points and 33 points positive, respectively. They're both at the top. The Chiefs have quietly moved up. They're 5-0. They're one of 2 undefeated teams. They haven't really done it in very convincing fashion. They're on a bye this week, which is why I didn't cover them. Mahomes threw an interception. He now has 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. To put it simply, he's not having a good year. Now, I don't know if coming back from the bye that's going to change things or not, but they have been a very unimpressive 5-0. Because as it looks right now, they're 14th in points on offense and they're 5th in points on defense. So they're looking like the same team they were last year, where they won the Super Bowl. But I don't know. They just haven't looked the best since then. But they're still the Chiefs. They're still 5-0. They're still second in the AFC in point differential. So clearly they're doing something right. At the bottom, we have the Miami Dolphins with -53, and we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at -46. Now, it looks like they have allowed one of the highest point totals allowed by a defense in the AFC and in the NFL. That honor actually goes to the Bengals. You can see at the middle of the pack at -5. They've scored 140 points, but they've also allowed 145 points. So if we go into the Cincinnati Bengals here and see what they look like in terms of their stats, we'll see probably a really good offense and a really bad defense. So, boom. Let's take a look what it says. Yeah, so they're 4th in points on offense, but they're 31st in points allowed. So that is not good at all for the Bengals. Hence why they're 1-4. So that's the AFC. Now we go over to the NFC. The Minnesota Vikings are the best team in the league right now. Spoiler alert for the power rankings. With a +63 point differential. The Saints are still riding the high wave of their first 2 games, which is why they have a +44 point differential despite being 2-3. And then we have my Washington Commanders. Look at that. We have my Washington Commanders with a +40 point differential right now. That is likened to go down, because I do think that they're going to lose to the Packers, unfortunately. But, man, 4-1. They've got the 3rd highest point differential in the league. They are, well, when we go over the power rankings, you'll see where I put them. But they are looking pretty darn good. The only thing that the Commanders need to worry about are the amount of points that they are allowing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are 5th in the AFC. They are 5th in the NFC in points allowed. Off the top of my head, I believe they are 20th in points allowed for their defense. So they still have a bottom 10 defense. But the good news is they have looked good in the last 2 weeks. So maybe that will be changing. They are first. Oh my God, I can't believe this. The Commanders, the Washington Commanders, are first in points scored and fourth in yards. And then they're 20th in points allowed and 14th in yards allowed. So they still have a bottom half defense. But like I said, they are looking better as the weeks go on. So here's hoping that they continue that wave. All right, so now we come to the power rankings. So the power rankings are going to be very different actually. So, but I have a good idea of what the power rankings I think are going to be. So the Minnesota Vikings are number 1. Obviously, they've looked like the best team. 5-0, highest point differential. They've allowed some of the fewest points. They've scored some of the most. They are looking like the crop of the NFL, surprisingly, with Sam Darnold. They're number 1. I'm gonna put the Chiefs at number 2. They are 5-0. They haven't looked the most impressive, but they win football games. They're winning. They're playing in a similar way that they did last year. And what happened last year? They freaking won the Super Bowl, and they are 2-time defending champions. So, Vikings, Chiefs. For number 3, I am still going to put the Bills at 3 because I do think that despite their loss to the Texans, that's clock management. They very easily could have won that game, and they still have the highest point differential in the AFC. So I'm putting them at 3. Number 4, I'm going to go Ravens. Now, there are a lot of other teams I could have put there. I could have put the Broncos with how well they've been doing. I could have even put the Bears or the Lions. The reason why I'm putting the Ravens in there is they started 0-2, but these last 3 games, they've reestablished themselves in a big way. And I favor past success. Like, if a team has been good in the past and they're returning to form, I rate them higher because of that. And then number 5 are the Washington Commanders. They're the 5th best team in the league. The reason why I don't have them higher is just because of the lack of sample size. The Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens are all established teams, and they're doing what they are expected to do. They're playing really well, like they always do. They're reliable, tried and true. And like I said, the Commanders are just a bit more unproven. Now, if they beat the Ravens, obviously next week's power rankings are going to be higher than the Ravens. But I don't feel more comfortable rating the Washington Commanders any higher than 5, which is way better than I thought they were going to be. So that is my top 5 power ranking for Week 6. We have the Vikings, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Commanders. How about that? It's a big game for Washington this week. It is great time to be a Commanders fan. We haven't been this good in 30 years. I am on cloud 9. I'm glad you guys can enjoy this moment with me through these reviews. I'll see you guys next week for Week 7. I'm hoping for a Commanders W, but Ravens are a tough team. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you'll see me next week like you always do. I'll see you guys later.